So America's a bit of a mess right now, huh? With corporations and the billionaires who run them just tearing apart the fabric of society at the expense of the working class to line their own pockets. Oh, and speaking of pockets, they do all of this with the help of, handy-dandy politicians. They just keep safely tucked in there to do their bidding. Well, I firmly believe in that phrase, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, because we're repeating it right now, because we've done this before. So during the height of the Industrial Revolution, people like Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie decided to start lining their own pockets by breaking up unions and paying workers less and just being horrible dudes, man. And it got so bad that there was a whole ass battle in Pittsburgh. Yeah, like a war. I'm Brittenstein, and today we're going to talk about the Homestead Strike. Yay. So before we get into the strike itself, we need to give a little bit of backstory about why this was such a big deal in the first place. Now, this is in the era of company towns. Now, company town, what is that? Well, company town is when a company, obviously, is in a remote place. And so to have workers work there, they build a town around the coal mine or the mill or whatever it is. And their workers live there. They're given housing and whatever, which sounds great, right? No, it was not great at all. Most companies use this as a way to exploit their workers. Yay! They wanted to extract as much labor out of them while putting the least amount of money into their workers as possible. Sound familiar? Now, what made the company towns the absolute worst was that you had to live there if you wanted to work for that company. So either it was the only option because it was a very remote place, or the company forced you to live there. And in the company town, as per the name, the company owned everything. All the houses, all of the businesses, all the stores were run by the company. And since they owned everything, they paid their people with essentially monopoly money. Yeah, they paid their people with fake money. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they pay their people with fake money? Just think about it. If they don't give their workers real money, they can't leave into the real world. And you've got them forever. The company gives you fake company money, and then you go to the store owned by the company, and that's how you pay for your eggs and your milk, is with this just fake monopoly money. You pay your rent with it too. And because the company controls everything, they can also jack up the prices of everything and manipulate things just so that you can only afford to feed your family and have shelter and stay alive and nothing else. So they were luring people and their families into these jobs with the promise of work and then trapping them there indefinitely. And if you just trap your workers in the town that you built for the company, then you don't have to make the town nice to entice them to stay because they have no other option. It's a win-win, right? And capitalism fun, eh? And also, thanks to the prevalence of monopolies back in this day, which is like when one company just runs everything in that industry and there's no other options. These companies could do basically anything they wanted because they were holding the country for ransom. Hey, do you want trains to run? Do you want steel? Do you want whatever else it is that these people made? Well, then you have to do it the way we want to do it because we're the only option because we killed the rest of our competition. And by creating these monopolies, these men became so powerful that they could just pay off the government and be like, yeah, we're not too worried about you. Just we'll call you when we need you, okay, babe? Thanks. And the only protection that workers had were the unions. The owners of these companies hated unions with a burning passion. Strike breaking was all the rage amongst these guys, And Andrew Carnegie, which was the big old monopoly man of the steel industry, who owned Carnegie Steelworks in Homestead, where the battle takes place later on, was no exception to this disdain for organized labor. But what makes Carnegie especially heinous is that he was a little snicky snake about it, He didn't want to look bad. He didn't want people to think that he was this bad guy. He was like, I don't want to spend a lot of money and I don't want to give you rights and stuff. That sounds like a bad time. But I also want people to adore me and I want to never look bad ever. So I'm just gonna, from behind the scenes, squash all of the unions in all of my steel mills. And in interviews, I'm just gonna, tell people oh, pro-union, pro-labor, it's their rights. You go, guys, you get it. while just crushing everything from behind the scenes, and no one will ever be the wiser. And this was working out great for him. Everything was falling into place until Homestead. See where this is going? So Carnegie successfully demolishes all of the unions and all of his other mills, but by the time he gets to Homestead, it's just this lone holdout that he just can't seem to kill, and he doesn't understand. The union in Homestead that Carnegie was trying to, snuff out was the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, and they were skilled craftsmen of iron and steel, obviously. But this union had the whole, working together thing down to an art, and their communities were really nice. They had more amenities than most towns did at this point, and they had enough time off where they could actually participate in the local government to continue to make the town nicer and nicer for their families that worked there. So they had a pretty sweet gig. They had a good job, they got paid well, their community was thriving, and they were able to actually, live a life instead of just work constantly. So they were like, I'm not giving this up. You can, no thanks, you can go pound salt. And Carnegie's getting real sick and tired of these people. He's like, I do not want to pay these peasants a living wage anymore. Ew, what even is that? Blech. So he starts trying to come up with a plan to take this union down. He's like, how can I ruin thousands of lives and take advantage of all these human beings for my own financial benefit without looking like a bad guy? I know. A scapegoat. That's right. Okay, yeah, I can do that. I'm gonna go to Scotland for a nice little, R&R rest vacation. And you, my number two, you're gonna take care of it for me, right? Just, call me when it's all done and settled and neat and tidy. And I'll come back and be like, oh no, what happened? I am so shocked and surprised. And then it'll be over and we won. It's perfect. Commence plan. So this jabroni on one side is doing interviews, and he's out in the public eye saying, oh, I think unions are the right of the people, and that strike breakers are abhorrent. I would never use one. I think they're un-American. And now this is a real quote. Not a single mill is worth an ounce of human blood. That's going to be really funny here in a minute. Well, not funny, but you know what I mean. And then at the same time, he's bringing in this guy named Henry Frick, and he's saying, I need you to use whatever means necessary. Force, just whatever sneaky little things you can pull off to make sure that I can get the most profit out of this. And I don't have to deal with the unions anymore. You do it, my guy. You have my full blessing to go full crazy on these people. Like, did he think no one was ever gonna know this? So anyway, Carnegie just, scuttles off to merry old Scotland, and he leaves Frick in charge. And Frick goes, you know what? These contracts are almost up, so we're gonna renegotiate these contracts. And he gives them the shittiest deal imaginable on purpose, something that he knows they cannot accept, and goes, here you go. I'm trying to work with the union. I'm trying to see, here's a deal. It's peace offering. Take it. And they're like, no, this is horrible. This is like a 20-30% pay cut at least? No, we're not. We have a union. We're not gonna do this. We can negotiate, And then Frick is like, no, I don't think we can do that. And so he says, hey, when this contract's over, you either show up as a non-union worker or you can kick rocks. You can just leave and it's fine. We'll find somebody else to replace you. So they are not gonna go down without a fight. They tell Frick to stick it where the sun don't shine, and they start their strike. Now, Frick's response to this is to build a wall 12 feet high for the 3 miles around this whole mill. And they call it Fort Frick because it has barbed wire and scout points. It looks like a prison. And they're just like, what is happening? So the strike goes on as planned, and the whole point of the strike is to make sure that the plant or the mill shuts down and that no money can be made until you pay us a fair wage. And part of that is making sure that no scab workers or outside paid people can come in and run the mill without you. So that's what they draw to do. And that's when Frick has the genius idea to bring in the Pinkerton Agency. Because apparently he'd never met anyone from Pittsburgh before and thought that they would just yield to force. Oh, sorry, the coppers are here, better leave. Now, in case you don't know, the Pinkertons are interesting. They're an interesting bunch. They're basically like a army for hire. They call themselves a security agency, but there was at one point more Pinkerton agents than US soldiers. And they were outlawed in like 11 states because their favorite tactic to break up strikes was just violence. That's it. Just play dirty, get what you want, the end. So this is when things really start to get dicey. So Frick is like, hey, you're gonna go downriver a bit and you're gonna get on a barge, and then we're just gonna sneak you in on the river at nighttime and they'll never know. And then you'll go into the mill, and then in the morning, oh no, we're already here, sucks for you. And then it'll all be over, neat and tidy. But that's not at all how it worked out, like not even in the slightest. The Union guys thought they might try to pull something like this, so they had scouts watching at all hours to look out for strike breakers or scabs or whatever, anyone coming in to like, mess with the plan. And they saw the barge coming in and they were like, oh, this looks fun. Let's take this head on, shall we? So the patrol spots the Pinkertons and they give the signal, and then all of the workers knock over the wall to Fort Frick and they rush down to the, the foot of the river, and they try to meet the Pinkertons at the dock to make sure they can't even get off the barge. Like, we don't even want you to get off of your boat, like just leave. So the problem is that word spread around that the Pinkertons were in town, and soon there were about 10,000 residents storming the streets, ready to riot. There's little old ladies with billy clubs, men, women, children. Like I said, 10,000 people are livid, storming the streets. And then you've got the workers all riled up, and the leader of the union is like, oh no, this is bad. So he goes down and meets the Pinkertons, and he's like, hey, you guys gotta go. This is not going to end well for any of us. So if you could we'll talk later, like, see ya, bye. They don't leave. And then from somewhere, no one knows, a shot rings out. But regardless of who fired the first shot, it doesn't really matter, because after that, all hell broke loose, like full-scale battle. It was insane. Like the workers, they soaked a raft with oil, lit it on fire, and then floated it down the river, hoping that it would catch the barge on fire. The barge that had like a bunch of people on it. They also filled a mine cart with dynamite. Just packed that baby full, and they sent it down the hill to try and directly hit the barge and just blow them all up. At one point, someone fills a cannon with a bunch of scrap metal and tries to shoot it at them. Now, this didn't work out well because it ended up just shooting some of their own guys because they weren't really thinking straight at this point. But it was crazy. And on top of all this, there's just gunfire all over the place from all sides. Now, I don't condone violence. I don't think that it's, it works in many cases. But, if you push people too far and you take away their livelihood and you take away all their options, is inevitably this is what's going to happen. Things are going to explode. And I don't know why we haven't learned this yet. But this goes on for like 20 minutes. And eventually the Pinkertons put up, a flag of surrender, and they just get shot down because they're like, we don't care about your surrender anymore. It's too late now for you. So eventually they do like let them surrender. And the Union guys are like, okay, fine. If you promise to leave, we will let you walk through town and we won't bother you at all. And they're like, oh, thank God, this is horrible. Now, some of these, I feel kind of bad for some of these Pinkerton guys because some of them didn't know what they were doing. They were just told to show up and they were like, okay, I gotta go do my job. And then they ended up in a war zone. And they didn't have a dog in this fight, but it is what it is. So anyway, they're like, you can go through town and you'll be safe and we won't mess with you if you promise to leave. They're like, cool, we will leave. We promise, we will leave. We want out of here like as fast as we possibly can. But then here comes the kicker. Remember those 10,000 angry residents I told you about a little bit ago? Union guys are like, we won't mess with you, but we can't speak for them. So good luck, have fun. And the Union, or not the Union guys, the Pinkertons, get off the barge and they start to walk through the town. And it's I forget exactly how long the walk is, but it's a pretty far ways. And the entire time, 10,000 angry people, they're hitting them with clubs. They're punching them, they're smacking them, they're kicking them. They're doing whatever they can. They are capital P pissed, okay? And like I said, some of these guys, it wasn't their fault. It was Carnegie and Frick that were really the bad guys. But you can't help but get a little bit of satisfaction out of people getting, justice when they're done wrong and greed wants to like ruin their lives. But anyway, I digress. So the Pinkertons leave and everyone in town is like, we did it. Cool. Huzzah. Like, yay for us. So they think that they've won and they continue the strike, and the whole town is in such solidarity that even the waitresses refuse to serve anyone that they think might be a strikebreaker or a scab worker. And it comes to the point where there's so many people in town, they can't tell who's union and who's not. So they just leave. They just walk off the job and they're like, nope, you should make your own food, bitches. United. So what happened at Homestead gets printed in all of the papers, and it goes all over the nation. And support is divided. Some people are like, yeah, they got what was coming to them. And other people were like, did you have to like use dynamite? Like, is that something that we needed to do? That seems a bit excessive. Now the mayor, who is pro-union, by the way, he's, big, pro-labor guy. He writes to the governor, Robert Pattinson, not that one. And he says, okay, you know what? I know what you may have seen in the papers and it looks bad, but it's fine. We've got it under control. Nothing to see here. It's fine. We had a little, kerfuffle, but we've taken care of it. No need to do anything. We've got it. Bye. Thanks. But sneaky little snake that he is, Carnegie also writes Robert Pattinson. So old Robbie's got, the union saying everything's cool and the mayor, like, we're all fine, no need to come over. And then you've got Carnegie on the other side going, could you take care of this for me? Like, I don't know, with the army or something, that'd be great, buddy. We gotta stick together. Now he's got two sides, two conflicting desires, but only one of the people has enough political power to put enough pressure on him to, derail his entire career. So what does he do? What all politicians would do in that circumstance. They do the will of the people and what's best for the state, right? Oh wait, no, that's not real. That's not what happens. He sides with Carnegie and he sends in the National Guard of Pennsylvania. He sends in the army. What? Over 8,000 National Guard soldiers show up, and the strikers are obviously no match, so they surrender. Frick takes control of the mill again, and it looks pretty grim. They feel like they've been defeated and like all their hard work has been for nothing. And to make it worse, charges are brought against the union leaders for the death of the Pinkerton agents. And they try their damnedest to keep everybody united and to keep everybody, strong for the cause. But eventually the financial strain of the lawsuits and everything becomes too much, and people start to cross picket lines and go back to work because they can't survive unless they do. But the fact that the National Guard was brought in to break up a strike and to expel workers from their rightful, positions, kind of gets some people going, wait a minute, that seems a bit excessive. Maybe we've got this wrong here. And the union starts to get a little bit more public support than they had before, which seems like, okay, cool, we're heading in the right direction. Until some jagoff decides to show up and just fuck it up for everybody. Don't they do that all the time? An anarchist named Alexander Berkman, who thought it was a great idea. Like, hey, I want to support these union guys. How can I do my part? What's the best course of action here? I know, I'm going to assassinate Henry Frick. That'll fix everything. So he gets on a train, he travels to Pittsburgh, and once he gets there, he buys a gun that he had never shot before, doesn't shoot before he attempts to, take this guy out, which might have been, a key step in this plan if he wanted it to work out, which it didn't, because he couldn't wait patiently. He had like a whole ruse going on that he was going to go into Frick's office and then he was going to nab him. But he got impatient and just barged in, and then he shot the gun and it misfired, and he did shoot him, but Frick ended up living and being fine, and it just made him a martyr, and it completely sunk the union's cause and just messed up everything. Yeah, so, And even though Berkman's ideology was in complete contrast to the unions, and they had no idea that he even existed, let alone asked him to do these things, it just completely swayed public opinion against the union, and any hopes they had of reigniting their cause and taking their jobs back died with that horrible, horrible plan. So while I wish the story had a better ending, the way it ends is just the rest of the union workers vote to dissolve the union and cross the picket lines, or actually picket lines weren't even there anymore, and they go back to work for horrible wages, whatever Frick's wage terms were. And that was the end of it. The union was defeated and Carnegie got his way. But I do think it's important for us to know our history and to know that the workers' rights that we do have, even though they're, not as good as they should be, were paid for with blood, sweat, and tears, and mostly blood. While I absolutely do not condone violence, and I don't think that it would work out in anybody's favor, obviously, when you try violence, it just nukes the whole situation. But I do think that we need to understand what's at stake, and we really need to fight like hell, peacefully and legislatively, to maintain our rights and to honor the sacrifices of the people that came before us, to make sure that their children and future generations had it better than they did. And even though they lost the Battle of Homestead, eventually the monopolies were dissolved and laws were put into place to make sure, or at least to try and make sure, that they never happened again, and to enshrine workers' rights as actual rights of every American. And for a long time, it worked out really well. And then Reagan happened, and now we're slowly sliding back into all of that. So hopefully we can avoid that in a peaceful way. I don't want to end up on the news, guys. My point is, I know it looks bad. We've been here and worse before. And hopefully, if we all stick together and we don't do dumb things like the Berkman dude, hopefully we can come out of this better on the other side. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button for more weird and dark or just plain badass history that you probably didn't learn in school with me, Brittenstein. Thanks for watching.